McKinnon. I'm a senior cybersecurity researcher at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and I've been helping with CyberForce for a decade now. Uh, and we're talking. Anne, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Ann Wright-Mockler. I'm in STEM education here, but I've been doing CyberForce and stuff with our cyber folks for a long time. CyberForce since the first one here at PNNL, and then continuing on as we've moved to this central location one. So
we're excited to meet with you today. Overview the competition. Well, not so much the competition, but the security documentation. As you know, it's 1,250 of your points. So today, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat, and then I will take them. So let me share my screen and we can walk through the overview and rules document that we've got. So here you should have a copy of this already. The overview rules. There's a lot here. If I just gradually scroll through, you can see the scenario, the competition structure, the key rules. As Amanda said, we're not going to dig into the rules today. The scoring breakdown. Our focus today is on the security documentation. All right. And like I said, if you haven't read this document already, you'll want to. We have key dates here. We have already gone past some of those key dates. So last night was the rules. Fireside tonight is the security documentation. And then as you can, Friday for the few teams that didn't get their videos in, is your chance to get your late submissions on your videos. And then the next major deadline is going to be Monday, November 10th, and that's 8 a.m. Pacific time. I'm live on Pacific time. That's when your documentation is due, and we will give you, if needed, another 2 days of grace for those that aren't able. Life happens. You've got a midterm, something else that comes up. You can submit those on Wednesday. Please do submit something because even partial credit is significant. And as I put in the chat last week on the video C-suite, an extra 100 points, 200 or whatever, in a late submission, that still might be enough to help you beat your crosstown or cross-state rival. So please, get your security documentation in. Patrick last time mentioned that one of the unique things about CyberForce is this focus on communication, the briefing to the C-suite. That's your 5-minute video that you've turned in, but also the writing. I have never briefed the senior executives in my company, but if I were to do that, you want to make sure you take your A game and you go in prepared. The documentation, I've written documents that get sent to senior leaders, and you want those to be nice and concise. And there's a whole lot more pressure because it's a different style of writing than what you're going to get in college. We've got the City and Rift scenario that you've already seen, the competition structure, help desk, and I'm just scrolling through here. The key rules. Oh, let me back up again. So the points for these two, your video and the documentation, that's 2,500 points. That's a significant portion of your score in the competition itself. All right, and then we have the orange team scoring. So you've got the C-suite brief, and as it mentions, also we have the security documentation, also 2,500 points. Use the template that's been provided. There's a lot of cases where you provided a template, you may or may not like it, but that's just part of life. I've the last few years, I've been reviewing cybersecurity documentation from various utilities, and there's a lot of people that just don't want to follow the template. And when they don't do that, they don't provide the information that's needed. All right. Uh, there's a reference to some examples. We'll go over some of those. You will submit your PDF on Monday. And as I already mentioned, you've got until Wednesday, a week from Wednesday, to get those turned in. The competition expectations, fairly simple. Document all of the infrastructure. So there is assumed breach, VMs, and traditional architecture. So in the chat, what's the difference for those that were attending the rules or have already Fireside or already watched the or read through these documents? What's the difference between your VMs? If it's really helpful, you can just come in here. Yeah. All right. Good job. We've already got one response. Perhaps it was too simple of a question for you, but as it highlighted here, you can fix, uh, you can identify and fix the vulnerabilities in your traditional VMs, but on the assumed breach, you're not going to fix those. You need to identify them. You need to list them. All right, and then this we're trying to, as the saying goes, practice like you're going to play. So this competition is really to help you get ready for your first job, where you're going to be briefing others. Probably not your executives that first few years on your job, but you're going to be briefing a team lead, and your team lead is going to take that briefing and take it to his or her leadership, and then they'll take them to senior leadership. So the question for everybody, how do you know how you're going to get scored? What's the scoring contract that we have with you, the teams, on your security documentation? All right. Excellent answer. We've got, yeah, there is a rubric. And so that rubric is a key piece of this, the document here. We, over the years, we continually improve the process. And so we included definitions that senior and the rubric, the senior leadership, those are your executives. And they will expect you to know all of the details, but they'll expect you to present it in a very clear and concise manner. Your diagrams make logical sense. Also defined there, you can just understand the diagram quickly. That you justify your steps, you harden your steps. And so with those, we can come into the security documentation itself. I've got a few example documents to showcase, much like we did last week. So the system overview, each one of these rows is a grading criteria that the graders will review. And that system overview and the template, if you leave it blank, you're not going to get any points. If you say that I'm going to protect the system, that really isn't telling us what you're doing. So you're going to define the system, but you're writing this as if you're going to send it to the senior leadership. So they don't want to know, or they don't care whether you're running Ubuntu or Red Hat. CentOS, Mac OS, Windows. They simply want to know, if you will, the system and its purpose. Now, you've got an offshore oil platform. You're trying to make the company money. And so, define it, its purpose. The individual components might change out from year to year, but its purpose will stay the same. And you need to target that senior leadership level. So if you don't describe the purpose of your system, what's the score that you're going to get in your system overview? You list your machines that you've got, your VMs, but you don't define the purpose. What score are the graders going to give you? Go ahead and type it in the chat. You've defined the system, so you're going to do better than a 0. Okay, we're grading strictly 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 here, so you're not going to get a 95%. Thanks for putting in a response. Okay. Well, I said you defined it. I didn't say that. So you're at least bumping up to 2. 1 would be if it was just an unclear definition, but I said you defined it. Some of that is in the eye of the beholder. There's the grader, but we're going to define it, which means you're developing. If you listed the purpose, you have to list the purpose in order to get to 3 or proficient. So each of these bullet points is a must-have. And so that, if you give a purpose and you target your senior leadership, that's fantastic, but you haven't defined the system at all. All right. So that's your system overview. Then we go to the asset inventory. Same thing again. We're supposed to list all of your hosts. So when we say all of your hosts, does that include both traditional and assumed breach, or just one set or another? How many systems are you going to be for a full score? How many systems are you going to have to list in your asset inventory and your network diagram? All right. Good answer, Michael. It's 6. Thank you as well, Christopher. So you're going to list that. Now you should have, at this point, I'm going to drop over. We gave a few years back some examples of what we anticipate for network diagrams. This network diagram goes through a rubric, and here we've only got 5 systems. It was for another year, but just off the bat, we know that there's 5 systems. It's not 6, so it cannot get a complete score. And if we were to score this, it includes, if we look for exemplary, it has to include all assets. We already know it doesn't have all assets. And we need logical connections and interconnections. So if I just put 4 icons on a screen and put a circle around it, like we did here, is that describing how things are logically connected? No, it's not. This is, yeah, it's a start, but so then, we, in these examples, as they continue to improve, this one, now we've got, in this case, 6 systems, and they're just magically connected through some sort of dot in the middle. So, okay, we know there's kind of a network here, the star topology, and there's this thing called an internet, but we're still missing many components that you can see here. We now get, moving on up, proficient network diagram. Now we've got our host again. That when we drafted this one up, there were 7 VMs that the team's worked with. So you can see all 7 of those VMs there. We've got, a router that connects us to the internet proper. The purpose of the machines is actually is being described. Where you go to the others, like I said, this example, it's kind of got them listed. The first one just told you it was a laptop, but it didn't tell you what the laptop was for. So they gradually improve. And then we've got this diagram here. This diagram shows that there are 2 reasons why this one's included. So what is this a picture, or how is this diagram created? If you had to guess, what did they do? So what drawing package was used to create this diagram? Yeah, exactly. It was hand drawn, a bunch of whiteboard markers and a whiteboard. Just go to one of your labs, and if you've got all the information up there, that is perfectly fine. Um, that tells you, what you need. Pen and paper, it's good. We're focused on the content. There's absolutely nothing that talks about how that information is going to be presented. And we've got our exemplary network that actually will come in, gives you a legend. In this case, these are all reasonable icons that you'd expect, from a standard clip art package. But there's absolutely no reason for you to go out and spend money or to track down a license to get Visio or any others, which some of those diagrams are done with Draw.io and such. So these, yeah, and hand drawing a diagram, sometimes it's just so efficient. You can get, for me, if I'm hand drawing it, I just put them there. If I start to use a computer program, I start aligning things, and I will spend as much time trying to get everything top aligned or bottom aligned as I might be just putting things there. Sometimes the fact that you go in with a hand-drawn diagram could represent to somebody that this is still a work in progress, that you're willing to negotiate your design. Whereas when you walk in with something that's just too crisp and clean, people might think it's done and they might not offer up suggestions. So there's purposes to when and how you're going to present things and with what tools. So keep track of that as you progress throughout your career. For this competition, if we go back to the rubric, network diagram, there's nothing in here that says that it has to, that you have to use a computer program to generate it, or that it has to be rendered photorealistic or anything like that. You do see all assets must be located. The diagrams make logical sense and are technically sound. And you're using symbols and terminology that people expect to see. If not, you've got a diagram that includes the legend for the color codes and so forth. All of that's needed for your network diagram. There is a notion, asterisk on both of these that you can see down at the bottom. Your asset inventory and your network diagram need to be consistent. If you know that it's on your asset list, it should be in the diagram and vice versa. That's why both of those points are called out. So if you forget something in one of the diagrams, because these bullet points are must-have, you're immediately you're going to drop down a point because of the note and the criteria that we have down here at the bottom. All right. The known vulnerabilities. There are people that really want to know just exactly how many vulnerabilities are in the system. Don't ask me how many there are. Even if I knew, I wouldn't tell you. And the whole point of a 0-day vulnerability is we don't know it exists. So if you find a 0-day, congrats to you. And go ahead and list it. And you'll maybe have, an extra vulnerability or two that no one else has. It could be that you've picked a better scanner that that can identify more vulnerabilities. There's just lots of options there. We do know that we arbitrarily picked 23. If you're doing this well, you should have no problems identifying more than 23 vulnerabilities in the system. So if you have less than 23, that tells the graders that you ran out of time. You just weren't able to get through all of your systems. You had midterms or other assignments that you needed to do, and that's fine. Do what you can. And as flat out as I've told you, and it's written into the rubric, we will not tell you just how many there are. So go ahead and the more you can identify before the competition starts a week from Friday, the better off you are, because on Saturday you'll have a head start for locking down your systems. And also being able to respond appropriately on your assumed breach machines that you can't lock down, but you can anticipate the mitigations that you're going to need to do per the red team instructions. System hardening is another step, 25 points here. We've got, 0 or 1, coming up with 4 different items that you're going to do to harden the system. Should be fairly easy. It should be easy. In your CISO videos, you're prioritizing 3 or 4 high priority items. Those could naturally lead into these system hardening steps. So describe those, give us strong justifications for the steps you're taking or not going to take. And the steps taken are reasonable. If you ask to hire 10 new cybersecurity SMEs to secure Obsidian Rift's equipment, that's likely not going to happen. So that hiring another person, that's a reasonable ask. Hiring a whole team, not so much. And then professionalism and formatting. This is important. It's one of the reasons why we have you practice. You can have absolutely wonderful content, but if the formatting is off, people will get lost in it. If you present it, I look at this hand-drawn diagram and I see the content I want, and I can immediately start to work. If I showed that to somebody else, they'd be like, "Oh, that's ugly." The color choices, they would focus on it being a sketch and not focusing on the content. If you're going to the so this is where the professionalism matters. If you've got, and so make sure that your colors aren't glarish, that you don't have spelling and typos. All of that comes together. Aesthetic appeal, depending upon where you've come from. Washington State, if I were to, just pick on things, now we've got crimson and gray in Eastern Washington and purple and gold in Western Washington. If I were submitting something to the Cougars or to Pullman, I wouldn't put it in, let's see, is it green and yellow? And is that Ducks or is that, forget who in Oregon?
Oh, yeah, the Ducks are green and gold.
Green and gold. Okay, yeah, I would not turn in my green and gold document to to a professor at Washington State. So just the aesthetic appeal changes depending upon where you are and such like that. I use the right terminology and no major spelling or grammatical errors. So after you read your document, this is where you get a roommate, get somebody else to look at the document. Because I write things, I think I've done a wonderful job. I will go to sleep, put it aside. Next day, I'll still catch something. I fix it, I give it to someone else, and they find all sorts of things that I completely missed because I wrote the document, I fill in all the blanks. So give it to someone else for that final touch. So this is the rubric. Um, I've got an example that we're going to walk through, but before I do that, any questions on the rubric? Okay. We went through this. We have Lunar Quest was the example that we used last time, the Lunar Quest Family Fun Park. We had using this as our scenario. We've got a lunar themed amusement park that's been established to provide amusement to the guests. And we've got a number of attendees that can go through there. And, let's see, actually, I'll give everybody a few minutes to just go ahead and read through this. Once you've read it, go ahead and, um, you know, put something in the chat or do an applause or something like that. About ready to move on? All right. So here we've got our example theme or security documentation, and team ID was left blank. If this for the videos, we had a discussion with the graders. If you left your team number off, you got demerits on your scoring. In the security documentation rubric, you really need to have your team number on the form, but that's not incorporated into our rubric. So assuming this team turned it in, even without their team number, they would still be eligible for full points. But we're going to come in. Okay, so the system we've got this document. We will, after the Fireside chat, I'll send a copy to Amanda so she can get that out to you, the teams with some annotations that we have for examples. But today we're just going to work through this in real time. All right, so we've got our system overview. Oh, good. I just realized we wrote this and I never counted how many words were in there. So luckily we came in under 250 words. All right. So give everybody a minute to read this and then, type something in the chat. Where would this system overview come in on the rubrics? Okay.
Stephen, maybe you
So,
could pop the rubric up to the front for a second so they can see the
okay, yeah.
difference between 3 and
Thank
4.
you. Yeah. Let's see. We, let's, no. All right.
Is there anything missing from this scenario, from this system overview, that makes it a 3 instead of a 4? And the question has come up, is the paragraph describing the incident necessary, or would you prefer we just jump into describing the system?
Again, we're targeting the senior leadership, so when you're briefing them, they're going to come into this a little bit cold. You've already been living this for a week because you've worked on your videos. A brief description of the system is useful just to set the expectations, set the context for the rest of the document. We don't, but as was pointed out here, it's just the system and its purpose are defined. We didn't require an overview of the incident. But this is a good system overview. The question that I'll have for folks here, yeah, as Patrick said, the system and its purpose. The if you had your company leadership or even your roommates with POS, are they going to think point of sale, or are you going to have them lost in some other internet slang? So leaving, this speaks to jargon. And if you've got too much jargon in there, then you're not, yeah, it's not plain language. It's not going to be immediately readable by the C-suite. So you've got POS, we've got, API SAC, that's the amusement park information sharing. And, oh, I said, dang, I'm on the spot, so I forgot A and C. um, All right. Uh, oh, sharing and coordination. So that, so again, there's just a few little things right there that don't get it all the way. It misses out on targeting that senior leadership. So that's our example. All right. The next one is our asset inventory. So for our asset inventory, no. Um, how did the team do for their asset inventory? And Sorry. All right, hopefully you can still read both of those. If you're on if you're on a phone, my apologies. Right, so Patrick's got a good question in the chat. Why do you need to know the asset inventory of your system? Can you protect something that you're unaware of? It's really, yep. So this is why the asset inventory is huge. Even large organizations quite often forget to do their asset inventory, or they do the inventory when the system was first commissioned or first built, but you constantly have to do it day after. You have to keep things up to date day after day after day. So this asset inventory, where does it fit on the rubric? So okay, we have a vote for 3 on the asset inventory. All right. We haven't defined all the hosts, so for the sake of argument, we will assume that most of the hosts are listed, but then we also have to list most of the services. And in that case, no, I guess we have of these, we're missing 3 of, uh, 3 is 7. No, yeah. So is it most? Maybe, maybe not. I would, with all of the holes in the table, if you're going to have a table and you've got a hole, we're just going to look at our gift shop. It's proprietary OS, but we've got a blank box for the IP address. So if we were communicating via carrier pigeon, well, even carrier pigeons can have IP addresses if you follow the right RFC. But when you leave it blank, someone's going to assume that you don't know the answer or that you didn't get around to filling it in. So you need to put something, an indicator there on the fence line. They filled it in with NA. So when you put in the NA, that communicates to the reader that you thought about the question, you have answered it, and the answer is there's nothing to put down there. That's not applicable. So just all of these holes in the system make it problematic. It would, depending upon what you believe most is versus few, this asset inventory is bordering between 2 and 3. All right. And then when we go to the network diagram, let me try to make this a little bit bigger. Okay. So we have a network diagram here. What are your thoughts on the network diagram? Well, in this case, it's more of a physical scenario, but we do have our diagram. All right, we've got a comment that it's it's too cluttered. But this is a very fun amusement park. Every single inch of the amusement park is about amusement. Um, yeah, it is a bit cluttered, even if everything's completely full. This is where the graphics designers are essential on your teams as you go, especially as you move into the corporate world, so that you can convey stuff so that it just looks better. Is the diagram consistent? Okay. All right. So as we're looking at this, for me, if I were reading it, now we've got little cameras here all off on their own. We've got some cameras that are connected into wiring closets, um, and then backhaul to the operations center. So again, the people that developed this, they weren't consistent in their diagram, and that's a problem. We do have a legend over here, and yep, trees are listed in the legend. Very tiny, kind of hard to see, but we've got them there. We have a, a variety of things to Patrick's comment, and the asset inventory. We have a gift shop, and we've got a ticket scanner. We also have our security golf cart. We do have our security golf cart. Um, okay, so we have some of these assets that are listed here, but there are mismatches between the diagrams. Some of those are going to be a bit harder to see just on this limited screen share that we're doing without bouncing back and forth. But we do have things, the carousel is not listed anywhere. And we we've got, right, two cash registers or point of sale systems here, but we know that the food court also is taking, you know, has to ring up its sales as well, and there's no point of sale system up at the food court. So there's a variety of inconsistencies here. Um, yeah. All right, so
There's a
good.
question in the chat. With the
Yeah.
network diagram, I know there's some hidden hardware in an AWS environment. The reason for the reserved hardware is usually at the front of the network. Is it assumed there is a switch and router on our networks, or are we just assuming the router?
Oh, if your diagram looks good and is consistent, that will be lost on the graders. And you can see up here, we do not call, no, we've in the inventory, most hosts are listed. You're switching your router. That's more auxiliary network equipment. That it would be good to list something. If I go back, let's see, can I find, now on these diagrams, there's going to be something between your host and the internet at large. If you've got team laptops and your VPN server and all that, if you want to put them as notional on your diagram to show that that you're connected to AWS and then to your system, but the first diagram there that has nothing about how the network is connected, that's wrong, because we know that your devices are connected logically one way or another. So put something there. We're not going to be that harsh about, is it a switch? Is it a router? Do you have a VPN concentrator? Some of those are handled for you on the back end. Okay. And then okay. one of the points here, okay, your diagrams make logical sense. So because of that bullet point, I just had the research associates that were putting this together. Personally, one of my pet peeves on maps is when north is not pointed up. So this diagram is nice and coherent where everything's laid out geographically. But for me, the top of the map always is supposed to be north, and they violated that convention, and they pointed it east. So again, you can diagram things, you can describe a lot of things, but when people look at a map or when they look at a network diagram, there's a few things they're just going to assume. And if you twist that, it'll just make it harder for the reader to get through the document. There's also a note here, text is probably too small to read, just talking about the security guards and what they're doing. There's other infrastructure that we know that's in this diagram, such as the sidewalks that the guests are going to walk to and fro from. So you get a fair amount of points, but this diagram's just got too many inconsistencies internally and too many inconsistencies with the asset inventory to get full points. And then we go to the vulnerability list. So when you get that, and we can see that multiple vulnerabilities will be listed for the system. We've got the cameras. There's a blind spot. That's how the attackers got through the fence. They cut the hole where there was a blind spot. If we go back to the diagram, you can see there's nothing behind the big ride as far as cameras. Another blind spot that's called out in the list as well. We're no tamper indicators on the cameras. No. So there's just a lot of things that were identified. So each of your hosts is likely going to have more than one vulnerability. Count them all up, list them. And again, too hard to count on the screen share, but if you were to count them all up again, we've got 22 vulnerabilities listed. So for the rubric, what's the best score possible that they could get with only 22 vulnerabilities listed? Okay. Yeah. The best they could get with that limited list is 2, because it's less than 23. Vulnerabilities. I don't think that the rules explicitly define vulnerabilities. So go with your a standard definition. If you're concerned that the reader won't understand vulnerabilities as you use them, you can define it. It's always a good option. Yeah, yeah, like Patrick's response there. We're not going to be able to argue against NIST. Even if we don't like the answer, that is the National Institute for Standards and Technology's answer. You just can't go wrong. All right. And then system hardening. So this is the end of the document. So we have three steps that are listed here. So again, what's the best score that they could possibly get on their system hardening? if you're looking at the rubric. So we'll start working backwards. System hardening, 4+ steps that are comprehensive and technically sound. If there's only 3 steps here, that's just simple. You don't meet the minimums for an exemplary answer. Just throwing in a 1-sentence answer to get your 4th step will get you to 4, but in 1 sentence, you're not going to be able to provide strong justification. And so you'll need to provide some answers there. You've got to, the steps need to be reasonable, and you also need to utilize just open source and free software. So keep track of that. That's been explained in the rules. That has existed for years. We're using free and open source software to level the playing field between all of the teams. All right, and then professionalism and formatting is the last one. We've got, because I have it open in Word. We actually have a hint here. What's one of the problems with the professionalism of this document? Actually, on this page, Word's giving me 2 hints. A good technical editor, copy editor, is going to see that you got P lowercase o-s and all caps POS. It's an inconsistency that will just really bother a few people. So be consistent.
You have a question in the chat, David. Are steps the same as a strategy for hardening?
Yes, I think I will go with that. I don't think we've been called on that in the past. All right. So we'll have to take a mental note. Maybe we'll make the word change, but key strategies. No, thanks for the comment. Okay. All right. So the red squiggly gave me, POS being inconsistent, not using the acronyms. Well, what's for professionalism to end this off with? We've got personal underlined in blue. I just highlighted. Is personal the right word?
You got a no, an answer for a no.
Yeah, we've got a no coming in.
And with just a couple minutes left, does anybody have any questions? If you do, throw them in the chat so we can get those answered.
Mm-hmm.
And while you're thinking of that, I have a question for you. When is your on-time security documentation due? Monday, what time? What time on Monday? 8 a.m. Pacific time. Excellent. And thank you. I was just going to say any Monday or specific Monday? Yes, Monday, November 10th. What about your late? If you just can't get there by Monday, November 10th at 8 a.m., when would be your last chance to earn points? With a 25% reduction in whatever points you score. Wednesday, November 12th at 10 a.m. Central Time. That is correct. If you
Good
find,
question. You're
yeah,
going to, after Monday, you still have several days to do scanning and preparing before you show up on site. Um, Keep scanning because that's going to help you prepare better and be for the on-site portion of the competition. But once your document's turned in, you're good. And now remember the on the vulnerabilities, it's we're looking 23 is your break-even point. So if you found 40 and you keep scanning and you get to 45, don't worry about it. If you found, 21 and then turn in your submission on Monday, then later if you find 24, the difference between a 2 and a 3 here is going to be so much smaller than that 25% penalty. So if you find more, keep keep a note, but I'd recommend just turning it in so you can be done with it. That is, I often would tell people that I love tests in college because at the end of the hour or 2 hours, you were done. Or if you're writing a document, it would take me, 10 plus hours to fail a written document, where I could fail a test in just an hour. And so at some point in time, you just want to be done with your document. I get it. Wrap it up, turn it in by Monday. If life happens over the weekend and you get a better offer, then turn it in a week from Wednesday.
although if you turn it in on Monday, you can focus on actually doing the stuff on your system. So,
Mm-hmm.
and the
Yeah.
reason we have that late deadline on Wednesday is so you can focus on what you need to, getting to the competition, doing the things you need to do, etc. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. And the graders aren't going to go back and read your video or watch your video. So this is a standalone document. Make sure it's consistent within the document itself, but don't worry about matching your video.
Is there a list of users that should be on the systems so we can identify extraneous users? Check your rules and expectations document.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the rubric doesn't require you to list users in your security documentation. That's probably an oversight, but there's only so much we can ask you to do. So keep track of that for the competition itself, but that doesn't need to be in the security documentation.
All right, and if you have more questions, you know how to submit a ticket on Discord and get answers.
All right, everyone. If you have, as she said, if you have any questions, please put that in a ticket now. Now you have until Monday to turn in your security documentation for an on-time scoring. Otherwise, it's Wednesday for a late submission. Otherwise, you will see everyone's bright and shiny faces on Friday at Tinley Park Convention Center. And we will see you for check-in. If you need anything, feel free to send us something in Discord. Please make sure you get on there if you haven't been put in yet. Check in with your EDU. Otherwise, we will see you then. Have a good night.
Bye, y'all.
Good night.